Lab Color. Hi guys! Finally we go to the LAB color space. This is an absolutely amazing color space, because its scope of colors not only exceeds the scope of colors in RGB, but even the capabilities of the human eye. This color space is able to reflect all the color richness of our world, and let's work with it. Everything that we will do with this color space is linked to the theme of the channels, and that is why we are considering this wonderful mod in this section. Let's remember that RGB color space has 3 channels, which are divided by colors. Let's see what we have in SMIC color space. There are 5 channels, which are distributed according to the colors of the SMIC. And now let's move on to the LAB color space and see what channels are there. So, image LAB color, and here are our channels. The name of the LAB, as in the previous mods, is formed using the first English letters of the channel's names. These are Lightens channel, channel A and channel B. The peculiarity of this color model is that colors and color adjustments are separated from tone and contrast. Thus, we can separately adjust and change the lightness and contrast, and at the same time the colors will not be affected, and we will not have any excessively saturated colors, or vice versa, any gray shades if we reduce the brightness, but it will be a harmonious correction. Lightness and contrast can be changed in the lightness channel, but channels A and B contain all the richness of color. Let's see what they look like. At first glance we don't see anything special here, but this is only at first glance. In particular, channel A contains the information about the entire range of colors, which is such a stretch from green to purple. It is red in the diagram here, but in fact, in reality, it is a colder purple shade. The channel B is a stretch of all colors, a gradient that represents the transition from blue to yellow. And in total, these 2 channels give just all the color diversity that is possible to imagine. Well, even the one that cannot be imagined. Let's go back to our car and look at channel A. Everything that is represented here in white. Everything that strives for the light as much as possible represents red shades. Everything that tends to black as much as possible represents shades of green. Well, the gray color shows some natural shades, because, as you remember, the gradient has such a gray area in the middle. Look, something close to gray is in the middle. And let's try to invert this channel. Ctrl+I, and let's take a look at our car. It became green. That is, the colors have changed places, since channel A contains information about red and green shades. Then inverting leads to a color change. That's how sometimes you can change the color of your image. Let's look at the second channel and take an image in which there is a lot of yellow. Let's take this sofa. We are transferring our image to the LAB mod. By the way, we can switch between LAB and RGB without loss of quality. LAB is used for additional work with color. And go to the channel A, and we see that here in general everything is quite gray, because it is the same as in the case of red and green. If we look at channel B, then more yellow there is in some areas. The lighter these areas are, the more blue, the darker these areas are, and what is neither yellow or blue looks gray, and that's what we see in channel A. And in channel B we just perfectly see our yellow sofa. Let's also try to invert it. Ctrl+I and go to the composite channel. The sofa has turned blue. Like that. And now let's try to do something more serious. I have already switched to LAB mode, and let's use the curves tool. Press Ctrl+M or open it through the menu. Here are our curves, and let's see how they differ from the curves that we used to deal with. Firstly, there is no composite channel here, as in RGB model, and each channel is represented separately. Thus, we can separately adjust the brightness, contrast or color components. Let's start with the color after all. If you listen carefully, then you probably remember that channel A contains information about red and green. Go to this channel, and to make it a little clearer, let's take a look at this diagram. Look how colors are distributed across the histogram. That is, we have purple and red shades on the right, and on the left we have shades of green, and the more saturated and purple shades are placed higher, and on the right. The greener shades are lower on the left. In the very middle of our histogram is the point, that means the transition of green to red. Here we don't have a gradient, but just arrows. But if you look at the gradient, you'll see shades, which are approximately in the middle of the histogram. So let's get back to our fruits. On the right we have red shades. On the left we have green shades. In addition, if we use an eyedropper in our image, then we see in which zone of our curve this or that shade is located, and we can already adjust it precisely. For example, I use it on grapes or leaves. We don't have bright green shades, so they don't go far from the center. If we use tool which looks like a finger, then we can directly target the zone that we want to correct. Here, for example, this one. And if I raise this point up, then you can see how much red shades are added. I'm not going to do it so radically, but just raise it up a little. And I'll lower the green zone a little, to make the green colors more juicy. You can also select a specific point in the same way. For example, you can choose the section of grapes and use the arrows to lower it down. Well, that's too much. In general, it is better to work with arrows here, because they still give more subtle work. Now let's go to channel B and work with the yellow and blue shades. Well, first of all, I would probably add that yellowness, and I will put this point, so that my curve doesn't move too much. Added yellow color, like that. And let's click on the blueberries and slightly lower the curve down, and added saturated blue shades. Well, probably something like that. But now we can safely switch to the lightness channel and adjust the lightness here. Now it will be clearer to us how it looks like, and we can work with lightness here, as you like it better. Also, all the same principles with eyedroppers that we used in RGB mode work here. Take a look at what we had before and what we have now. That is a huge difference. It's just a dream of glossy magazines. So, maybe a little more. Okay, our picture has already become better, but we could also add more sharpness. To do this, go to the lightness channel, and here we can add a sharpness without the loss of quality that can occur when working in RGB. We find Sharpen Filter, Unsharp Mask, and add it a little. You can move the sliders, but I think that it is enough for now. Click OK, go to the LAB and see what we got. That was before we applied sharpness, and that's what we got after we applied it. I'm now switching in the history palette outside of the recording area, and now we have such a beauty. Just a dream of glossy magazines. And now let's see how we can use the LAB color model to edit a portrait. Let's switch to LAB mode, and let's go into the curves. We won't change the lightness now. I will switch to channel B, because I want to reduce the yellowness a little bit. We put this point here, which is our central point. And if you lower it a little towards the blue color, then yellowness is removed. That is, yellow shades are immediately removed. We can do this if we want to get rid of them somehow. Also, I could somehow change or emphasize the color of the eyes. So let's find this point. Here it is. And let's try to move it. I move lower, and the eyes become more and more blue. But at the same time, an extra yellow color is added. Therefore, of course, the yellow color could be dimmed with the help of this part of the curve. Let's go to channel A now, and I would like to make the girl's lips a little brighter. I find this point and lift it up a little. Well, the main thing here is not to overdo it, and it's worth fixing this piece here. For some reason, the arrows on keyboard doesn't work for me when I'm recording. It is better to use arrows on keyboard in order to have more delicate result. Well, let's raise it a little, so that there wouldn't be such a red color. Something like this. By the way, if we now return this point to its place on channel B, if we don't change the eye color so much, then we can make the eyes green on channel A. We can lower a curve. You can constantly switch between different channels, and you can add it there or here, wherever you think is more appropriate. And let's move on to lightness. And maybe we'll edit something here too. I'll stop there. Click OK. And let's compare how our portrait looked before our actions and how it looks now. That's what we had. And that's what we got. The girl immediately became more lively and natural. By the way, after you have done all the necessary work in the LAB mode, you can switch back to the RGB color model and continue your work there, if there is any need for it. And one more example. Often, when we take pictures, we see bright objects with saturated colors, and we think it's just great. But when we see our photos, for some reason all this array of colors disappears. Unfortunately, the technical capabilities of the equipment doesn't always make it possible to convey everything that we actually see, but we can try to return all this beauty with the help of the LAB color model. Open it, and now I will show you a life hack. How you can return the colors and edit the maximum number of color shades to the photos. We'll need curves again. Let's start with channel B. Although it is possible to start with A, it is more convenient for me. We put a central point, then we raise this part as much as possible. That is, we added a lot of yellow. At the same time, of course, blue is added too. Then you can do here something like this, and then we select both of these points, pressing Shift key, and using the arrows on the keyboard, we move to the right. And look, blue shades that weren't visible before are shown, just like chalk. We didn't even know there was so much blue in this image. Then we go to channel A, put the center point and do the same, bend our curve. See, red-purple shades are shown. We press Shift, select the central point and make several movements with an arrow to the right. By the way, you can also move it to the left. See what happens. You can choose an option that you like better. You can also go to the lightness color channel and refine a little bit here. Let's say you want to make a photo a little darker or lighter, but I probably prefer to make it a little darker and a little like this. Look, just like from a fairy tale. Compared to it, the original photo will seem black and white, as there are so little colors here. Such an extraordinary beauty. So, guys, all the color is hidden in the LAB color model. And let's get to the homework. Our first homework assignment will be to make these fruits juicy and delicious. Our second homework assignment will be to work on the portrait of this sweet girl and create such a fabulous architectural ensemble using the LAB mod. It was Peter Romanov and AIM School. See you next time.